In Exodus chapter 28 and verse 3, it says, "So you shall speak to all who are gifted artisans, whom I have filled with the spirit of wisdom, that they may make Aaron's garments to consecrate him, that he may minister to me as priest." And then it goes on to speak about making the furniture for the tabernacle and all the beautiful things. And so artists have been very much a part of the tabernacle of Moses, of the tabernacle of David, and the Temple of Solomon. And my guest today is Justin Hook, who is an artist from Sydney. And the last time we talked with Justin, I introduced you to how the Lord introduced him to Israel. And today he's speaking to me from Israel. And the Lord has opened up all these amazing things. So, Justin, welcome. And it's so lovely to talk to you again.
Oh, Ruth, God, it's always good when we get together. I feel like we never have enough time. We've always got too much to talk about. And it's so glorious to be in the land and Zooming with you in Australia. This is so cool we get to do this.
Amen. It's wonderful. So, Justin, this last year in 2024, you went to Israel in October for the Feast of Tabernacles, around about that time. So what was in your mind as you went to Israel in October last year?
Well, I mean, yeah, we can kind of start here, but there's so much connection to this. So I was actually in Israel, just to jump back a little bit. I know we said we'd start here, but we'll just give a bit of an introduction. I was in Israel during October 7th. When, you know, all of the terrorist attacks happened, and then the country had to poise itself what to do. And of course, it still is a very grievous time. There's a lot of difficulty going on as far as, you know, families losing their loved ones in battle. And then obviously there's still so many hostages that are being held. So this was a very, very intense space to be in when I was in Israel at the end of 23. And I actually had to get airlifted out by the military. I had the Australian consulate call me. I was planning to stay on because, you know, I've been traveling to Israel for almost 20 years and I know what it's like here.
Yeah.
I know what the nation I know what the collective nations of Arabs, Jews, and all ethnicities has to deal with on confronting and fighting themselves from terrorism. So we didn't know what we were going to expect going into this space. I don't think anyone knew initially what was happening. And so I was wanting to help, you know, convert from being someone who was just visiting again. I have so many friends here that I thought, wow, how can I help? But I had the Australian consulate call me and sort of say, look, we've already sent 3 airplanes to airlift Australian citizens out. If you don't take the next one, you're not coming home, basically.
Oh, wow.
So I had to bite the bullet and make
so
the decision, so to speak, skip the pun. And yeah, I was airlifted out by the RAAF and taken home. And it was a very troubling situation because, you know, you're leaving people that you care about, and then everything's escalating, and then the waves of what happened in the media and all this twisting of information caused even more problems in the nations, which was falsifying information. It was just dreadful. I've kind of been carrying that and very connected to what's been happening in the country and connected to the people on the ground here. And, you know, I travel to Israel a lot, and usually I try to come for the feasts. And so I had a big plan that was to come back this year, 2025, and stay a bit longer and have some things I wanted to be invested in. So I was unsure whether or not to come in 2024, but last minute, I thought, no, I can't, like, the people I know are suffering. The country's suffering.
Yeah.
And I'm also seeing things from an outside perspective as well, seeing all this disruption with kind of the world kind of turning on Israel, and things become very toxic. And I thought, well, who am I to just like leave everyone and sit out in the comfort of my country? Like Australia doesn't really have problems. I mean, we do, but not like severity, not like the severity of Israel. Like we've got comfort. We don't have war.
Correct.
And so I thought, I have to go and support the country and all the people that I love, and also any way that I can be a voice to kind of clear the air of all these false narratives. I'm happy to do it. So at last minute, I decided to book some tickets and just come for like 2.5 weeks for the Feast of Tabernacles. I thought that's enough. I'll just come. I'll see the people I care about. I'll celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles. I'll pray. I'll share, and I'll support. But incredibly, coming to the end of the Feast of Tabernacles, I'd been traveling all over the land, from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv to Haifa to Tiberias, and round and round. I was having dinner with some friends in Tiberias, and as we were going through from the restaurant to go get something afterwards, I noticed a brand new installed bomb shelter just sitting in the middle of the street, like on the side of the street. And these aren't the bomb shelters that are underground, but these are these kind of like these new installations that are like, they look like temporary bomb shelters. It's just like a cement rectangular kind of cube thing.
Yeah.
And with an entrance point, I think they're obviously designed to protect people at last minutes from rockets and from mainly probably shrapnel. I mean, if a rocket was to hit them directly, I don't know how well it would protect, but I don't think people understand that the terrorist organizations that have an intent to harm the Jewish nation and the people, it's quite evil. They deliberately have a second encasement inside the rocket body, which is dedicated to housing shrapnel. So it's like you have a rocket, which is a weapon, but then they deliberately put shrapnel in them. So these are weapons that are deliberately designed to harm innocent people, and cause gruesome effects. Whereas military installations that come from the IDF, their military grade rockets are designed to dismantle and destroy, missile installations, not people.
Yes,
Difference. I've been learning a lot about that recently because I have a lot of people on the ground here explaining that to me.
Yeah.
But so back to the bomb shelters. So I walked past this bomb shelter, and it's a big white, thing, and I thought, wow, it just, to me as an artist, it just looked like a huge blank canvas.
Yes, yeah.
It's almost like calling to me and saying,
paint me.
Paint me. You know what I mean? It really was. I felt like this pull, like this thing. I was like, I almost felt like I couldn't allow it to stay white. It had to be, something had to go on there.
Yeah. So just before, I was just going to say, just to explain to people that don't understand, these are in the street, so it's likely for people that are pedestrians to be able to run and hide from and they don't get very long to get in there. So you need them along the streets.
The more you get closer to any of the borders of the country, depending on where you have a terrorist organization, camped out on the other side of the border. Like, for instance, if you go all the way up north to places like Kiryat Shmona, which is right up on the border in the north, you literally have 10 seconds.
10 seconds, yeah.
Like in some places, 10 seconds. The further you go down, maybe to places like Sfat, which is one of the highest cities in Israel, it's kind of on the western, northern side of the Sea of Galilee, you've got 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So it depends on proximity to where, obviously, the terrorists are firing their rockets from.
It's still not long, though. Whether it's 10 seconds, 30 seconds, it's not long.
I don't know if you've ever been in a rocket raid, and I've been in several since I've been here this trip.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, I was in Isafia or Haifa and staying in a guest house just behind Kelat Carmel, where I met you, actually. And at 4 a.m, all the sirens go off, and you wake up. And I had been so tired, I hadn't sort of put any clothes or preparation. So, you're sleeping in your boxer shorts, and all of a sudden you're waking up. And this particular guest house doesn't have a shelter, so the protocol was to go down 2 floors, because I was on the top floor, and sit under like a stairwell or in a hallway that was at least had some sort of better protection than the roof.
Yeah.
And so I woke up, and I remember I went through this processing time, like, oh, I have to get dressed. And my clothes were kind of lying all over the place. So I was like, what am I going to put on? Do I need to put on shoes? Because you've just been woken up out of a daze.
Yeah.
And so I remember I went to go put on these jeans that I had on, and they weren't coming on. And by the time I'd sort of got my foot through them, the inception had already happened. So, I mean, had it hit the house, I would have been gone. But these inceptions, thankfully, sorry, I have a resident rooster that's over here. You'll probably hear it through our conversation. It's quite funny. But yeah, had the inception sort of missed or anything like that, it would have been quite detrimental. But I heard the inceptions go off, probably two or three of them. And I thought, okay, well, I don't know how many rockets are coming. So I just went down to the hallway and just sat there. And
Mm,
the protocol's there to sit there for 10 minutes because shrapnel obviously falls
yeah,
and people can be taken out by shrapnel. So
exactly.
it's it's a very severe experience. I mean, I've been through I've been through quite a few amount of different scenarios of having to respond to rocket sirens in Israel, whether it's in a car, whether it's like in a shopping mall, whether it's in different public spaces, and you just do your best. You
Of
do your
course.
best to obviously get into a safe position. Um, and there's certain rules that you can follow to keep yourself safe, you know.
Mm,
I've never felt unsafe and I've never felt fear. I mean, I have Holy Spirit and, I'm a person of faith. So, I mean,
yeah.
I do my best to be sensitive to the nuances of God to keep me in the right place at the right time.
Yes,
And I know
exactly.
it's really big and powerful. So I'm, Psalm 91, he who dwells in the secret place,
The most
the
I
Most High will abide under the shadow of the Almighty. So I've never felt terrorized in that essence, but you definitely are jolted awake and you have to make wise decisions, and
mm,
that's real. It's a
yeah.
real deal.
And so those scriptures have become very important or even more real than they are normally back here in
Mm,
Australia for sure, because you really it's putting your faith into a real testing situation.
yeah.
And
I
I'd
mean, I was
I'd
going to say, yeah,
imagine for the
faith, we can use faith for a lot of things, but when you're literally faced with death, I mean, that's where the rubber meets the road. Like, actually, what do you believe?
mm,
What you believe is the foundation of what you live off. And so if you're going to be in a situation where this could be your last breath, you
yeah,
find out what you believe.
yes, exactly. Yeah. It's quite it's hard to describe to other people because people go, "Why are you going into this war zone?" But it's that's just another conversation which I don't want to go into. I think what we'll do is we're going to listen to a song and then we'll come back and look at these bomb shelters that you've been painting. So we're going to listen to Karen Davis singing As the Lord Roars from Zion. Amen. My guest today is Justin Hook, who is an artist from Sydney and he's currently in Israel. We've just been talking about his adventures on October the 7th, and he went back just for the Feast of Tabernacles. And so, Justin, you're still there from October last year. So you're 2 weeks extended into several months. So what happened that you stayed on?
So crazy. It's such an awesome story. And it's
Yeah.
so funny looking back now, it makes so much sense to me. But yeah, obviously I came here with just the intention to be here for the Feast of Tabernacles, and I quickly took, a couple of weeks off work and thought, oh, I'll come over here and rejoin with everyone that I was here with and check on everybody and show my support. And,
Yeah.
I love the country. So travel the land and all the good stuff that happens when you're in Israel. Um, and then, as I was saying, at the end of my trip, I was having dinner with some friends in Tiberias and I saw one of these big bomb shelters on the side of the road, the new installations. I think they're like the movable shelters. And it was just crying out for some color and some paint. It was this big white canvas waiting to be painted. And so I said to my friends, wow, I feel so compelled to paint one of these. And then I noticed there were more around the streets. I thought, who can I contact? Like, how would I be able to do this? And then I thought to myself, well, I know someone in the city who knows everybody. And so I messaged this friend of mine. I said, who would I have to talk to get permission to do this? And he said, well, you'd have to talk to the mayor of Tiberias. And then he said, give me 2 minutes. I said, okay. And then literally within 2 minutes, I get this text message back from him. He said, you're authorized. You can paint as many as you like. I was like,
Oh my
hold on,
goodness.
what? Wait a second. I was like, wait. What do you mean? He's like, you'll do it. And then this friend of mine has a non-profit organization, the Aliyah Return Center. And he said, well, we'll pay for the paint. I was like, hold on a second, what just happened? And I said to him, look, well, maybe like I didn't budget to be here this long, and I need someone to stay in my home, and like there's no logistics plan for this. I said, how about I go home and I'll work for maybe 3 or 4 months or something and save up a whole bunch of money, come over and do a big project. And he said, no, 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 you do it now. Otherwise it won't happen. And I was like, oh dear. So I was in this situation and I thought, God help. Like this is like a beautiful opportunity to show my support, and also as an artist, to have, public projects to me is like it's just such a fulfilling thing.
Yeah.
And they don't just drop into your lap every day, So I thought, oh God, what am I going to do about this? So I actually called my travel agent. I used a mutual friend, Caroline Hyde's travel agent, to get my return tickets. And I messaged her and I said, listen, um, I know we booked a non-refundable kind of like cheap ticket. I said, but something's come up and I think I might need to stay. What's it cost me to change my ticket? And she gave me a figure and I may as well just buy a new ticket. Like it was so much money. I thought, oh, I didn't budget for this. Dang it. And then she said, why do you want to stay? And I said, well, I've got this project that's dropped in my lap of painting a bomb shelter or many bomb shelters. And it just seems such a great opportunity. I don't want to lose it. And she said, you know what? She said, me and my husband used to we come to Israel all the time, and we helped clean some of the shelters and facilitate them in the north. She said, this sounds amazing. Let me pay the change ticket fee.
Oh my
And I
God.
was like, what? So she paid like a gamut of it, like a huge amount of it. And I was like, okay.
God, God's
And
opening
then
the
another
door.
friend opening a door. And then another friend, Caroline Hyde, she said, turned around and she said, you know what? I feel like this is God and I feel like this is beautiful and we'll host you. So I was like, okay. So I had all these bases started to get covered. And
Yeah.
then I messaged a friend back home and I said, listen, I really need someone to stay in my apartment while I'm gone and kind of facilitate the rent. And I haven't budgeted for this. And my friend's like, well, I need a place to stay. I'll stay in there and pay you rent.
Oh wow.
So all of these bases just got covered like instantly. And I was like, okay, wow. And I just
Mm.
graciously stepped into the position. And I mean, long story short, it took me 3.5 weeks to do this first shelter, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Street art is like the most enjoyable process because, as an artist, usually you're stuck in your apartment or your studio or wherever you paint, and no one sees what you're doing.
That's
And
right.
usually, you're processing out stuff, and the journey of completing something that's very large, a lot happens in an artist's life to get stuff out, and no
Mm.
one sees that. They just see the end result. But when you're doing street art, everybody sees from the first, you know, brush stroke or whatever, spray paint, all the way to the end. They see the whole process. And one thing I love about this country, what I love about Israel so much, is that they're a culture, the Jewish culture, the Israeli culture is a culture that celebrates the arts.
Yeah.
They celebrate the arts. They honor it. It actually holds a place of honor. And I don't know if that's a spoken thing. It's just a thing. Like, when people busk on the side of the road, people honor it, and
Mm.
they stop and they listen, they participate, they form circles, and it just becomes like almost like a communal thing, especially when it's worship, or singing about Israel or singing about the people. It's very different than the West. And so, Ruth, from the beginning of me doing this first initial bomb shelter, I literally every day I had people stopping off, giving me things again, giving me food and drinks and asking where I'm from and why are you doing this and why are you here in the middle of a war. And I got to share my life story with people. I got to share so many wonderful things I've experienced in God and in Messiah to people, to remind them of who God is and and that He's still here and He's still present, and that they're not. The one thing I came really to give was to let them know they're not. The Jewish people are not alone,
Mm.
and let's not siphon our truth of reality through media. I
Yes.
mean, obviously, it plays a huge part for communication purposes, but truth has legs to it and it's on the ground right in front of you.
Mm.
So I was able to spend so much time with people and just encourage them, love them, and then take them into the journey. And I had no idea what I was going to paint. Um, People don't notice about me, but I'm actually an untrained artist. I've never studied art in my life. It's purely a gift from God. And I've learnt in the last couple of years, as I started to do a lot of murals and street art, that I've learnt to just kind of launch myself off into a place of spontaneity with God, really.
That's good.
And I'm shocked at what comes out. I
Hmm.
had no idea what I was going to paint on this shelter. The ideas just came very vaguely to me. I thought that might be good. And then as I started, this whole story started to come out and
Grows.
all of these colors and all of this beauty. And I had people celebrating and yelling across the other, from the other side of the street. Cars would stop day after day and people would get out of the car and be like, whoa. And the art was impacting the community and impacting the hearts of the people. And really, it was just the love of God. It
Mm.
was the love of God. It was the faith of God. And that's really what I wanted to remind the people of who He is, who they are,
Mm.
and also all of the good promises that He has for this beautiful place called the Pleasant Land. So I don't know if you'll ever show pictures of what I did for the first
Yes.
shelter, but
Yeah, I was going to say I'll for those that are on YouTube, they'll be able to see the photographs. I was just going to say with this first one that you did, for those that don't know the area, Tiberias is around what the Bible calls Galilee, and so that first one you did actually is scenes from the Galilee. Do you want to just describe what you were painting for those that can't see it?
yeah, well, as I was staying in an area that was kind of up on the Galilee ridges, a suburb, and as I was driving down and thinking, what am I going to paint? I didn't even know where to begin. I was so awestruck. It was a beautiful day. I was so awestruck by the beauty of the Galilee, the Kinneret.
Mm.
And we passed all of these orchards and these date palm areas just filled with date palms. And it was just so beautiful, like I don't think people realize how fruitful this country is agriculturally,
Yeah.
especially the Galilee. It's very untouched and it's very peaceful. And so I don't know. By the time I got down there and got all the paint and set up, I'm like, what should I paint? I thought, oh, I'm just going to paint the seascape. The Golan Heights in the background and the water reflecting the sky. And so I just started thinking, no, I'm going to honor the land. I'm going to honor the beauty of this place. And then as the days went by, all of these little nuances like a sunrise and different color spectrums started to come in. And then I decided to put in all the different fauna and flowers and birds. And these are very simple things, but as I was painting them, I realized that I was really putting a frame on what was already in the country and that was already, worth celebrating and worth remembering where you are. And I think it really helped everybody because,
Yeah.
you know, I think I said in another interview with Zach Sage, I don't know if you saw it, but, the bomb shelters are, when they're empty, they look very ominous. And a
Mm.
lot of people, um, you know, in October 7, they ran to hide in bomb shelters and they were murdered in them. It was just so terrible. So the concept of having to run to this big dark cave, it carries a bit of trauma to it. And
Yes.
so I didn't realize how powerful it would be to paint these shelters. Because
Mm.
anyone can go paint anything and be like, oh, I'm doing a mural. How effective is that?
Yeah.
But when you're in a time of intensity and when you're in a time of confronting darkness,
Yeah.
like spiritual darkness, darkness has a lot of different faces, and it doesn't matter which one you're facing. But what's happening here is the confrontation with this country collectively having to face darkness. It's happening on so many levels. There's so many faces to this darkness at the moment. And so I didn't realize that just the simplicity of painting something simple, almost childlike, that was full of the spectrum of color and like the hope and faith of heaven, the kingdom of heaven. I had no idea that the impact that it would have on people
Mm.
because it like this, art is very spiritual. And I think that's the
Exactly.
purpose of art. It's
Yeah.
just so spiritual. It carries so much more than we think. And so, yeah, I'm trying to get to the point that so many people would stop me and almost cry or almost laugh and just go, wow, this is amazing. And then when they found out where I was from and how far I traveled, it was even more of an impact. So it's
Yeah.
all of these elements that were compound that end up becoming a physical, tangible testimony to let Israel know you're not alone. And let's turn something that was looks like it's supposed to represent death into something that represents life. It's a
Mm,
victory.
mm. Yeah. And I love what you did on this first one, that over the door is the tallit and then inside is the menorah. And so for
Yeah.
somebody going into the bomb shelter with fear, there is the menorah with the light of God um, displayed there. I would have to think it would bring a measure of comfort as they have to go in there.
Well, it's so funny. As I was getting closer and closer to seeing how this thing was coming out, it really made sense to me because, you know, Israeli Jews use the Talit to go into prayer all the time, and
Mm,
it's supposed to represent kind of being in the tabernacle, like Moses went into the tabernacle to be with God. So it's a huge contact point and a huge reference point to connecting with God, and Him being your shelter. And so I just had this little glimpse of it going around the door. And then as I started to paint it, I was like, wow, this really makes a lot of sense because you're running into the Lord, you're running
yeah.
into God, and He is your shelter. In fact, I ended up putting in Hebrew letters Psalm 16:1, which basically says, translated to English, preserve me, O God, for you are my shelter.
Mm,
You know, so people read that and they're running into Him. Like that, you know, at the end of the day, it's God that protects someone. It's not a physical structure.
yeah.
So creating something that, you know, like that, I think I'm even impacted by it, and I didn't even know how it happened. Like, and of course, the menorah is symbolic of the seven spirits of God in the Tanakh. It's the symbolic of Yeshua. It's Mashiach. You know, it's the light of God, the light of the world.
Mm.
It's all Him, and of course, you're running into Him. I think if I was running from rockets and seeing that, I think I would be very, very comforted.
Exactly.
You
I
know,
heard a wonderful story the other day, and I don't know if you've heard this, but on October the 7th, down the south, when they were hiding in the bomb shelters, there'd been a Jewish artist that had painted some of the um, bomb shelters. And as
yep.
people phoned for help, they said, "Where are you? Which bomb shelter are you in?" They said, "We don't know," but they actually described the artwork that was on the shelter, and whoever was looking for them contacted the artist, and the artist
Yep.
knew exactly where each where the people were by the artwork. And I mean, that's a very practical way of actually
Amazing.
helping to rescue the people, apart from the comfort that it brings.
So, so amazing. Yeah, somebody just sent me last Shabbat. Someone sent me the video. It was like I don't know if it was a news report or something, but it was a video, and it was that exact testimony. And I was almost in tears because I mean, I was like, wow, I'm part of this now.
Yeah.
I actually want to reach out to that artist. And I was thinking maybe this year when I reestablish myself for a bit longer to do more work here, I can probably collaborate because he's far more talented. I thought he's far more talented than me. Like his work is very, very defined and beautiful and has so much depth to it. But yeah, I heard that story and just thought,
Mm.
wow, like in who would have thought, you know what I mean?
Oh, exactly. It's
The
like,
artwork would have that type of a wall.
and because I knew you were there doing this work and I've been following it, I heard that story and I was like, oh, wow, there's such a practical sense. The comfort's critical, but to actually be able to identify where they are by the artwork, and you go, well, only heaven knows the recording of all these stories. We're going to just break for a moment. My guest is Justin Hawke, and we're going to listen to Joshua Aaron singing David Danced, and we'll be back to talk a little more. My guest today is Justin Hook. He's an Australian artist and he's working in Israel at the moment. The Lord has opened these amazing doors, and he's just been telling us about painting bomb shelters around the Galilee. So, Justin, we just talked about the first one and how this all started. I understand you've completed another four. So tell us
Yeah,
about
I
what,
have.
and I think that's to do with where children are. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's such an amazing. This is something that's still unfolding.
Mm.
So when I was doing the one down in Tiberias, as I said before, like I had so many people stopping. I think I made about 10 different jobs, like private jobs. People gave me their numbers and said, "Come and paint my house, come and paint my school, come and paint my yeshiva, come and paint my roof." I had like all of these opportunities open up, but of course, someone has to
Sistine
refuse. It's like,
Chapel.
just an example. There's all of these opportunities that are still open for me, but I'd have to come back on a different visa where I could actually work because
Yeah.
I can't work. So everything was kind of voluntary. Of course, I got looked after. Um, and one thing that I did last minute, which was pretty smart, thank God, is I realized that I should probably set up a link on my website because I have a website which just showcases some of my artwork and people buy prints and stuff every now and again or look at the gallery. But I set up a completely separate page dedicated to art projects. And um, I included a picture of the first bomb shelter I was going to paint and explain the scenario and said, if people want to contribute to this as a project fund, then here I am, because the more people contribute, the more I can do. Because this
Mm.
was something that was totally unplanned for me. So I was completely, I was unaware that I was going to be in this situation. I thought, well, let's just see what happens. And actually, people from all over the world started to give. The link
Wow.
went viral, and people from every country. I made a couple of $1,000 that was able to facilitate me and keep me here. So I was
Praise
so
God.
thankful to all of those people, and I eventually want to put together a video of the journey and actually send out an email to all those people thanking them, because without them supporting me, I wouldn't have been able to stay this long.
Mm.
So it was an absolute blessing, and I was so honored that people would get behind this and pray for me and all that type of jazz. So I was still kind of on this riding this wave when I had a friend of a friend, an Orthodox Jewish woman who lives in Sfat, reach out to me and say, "Look, I started a non-profit Jewish organization just before the war because we were constantly getting hit by rockets, and
Yeah.
we were under we weren't equipped properly. We're
Yeah.
under-equipped. They didn't have enough bomb shelters near schools. They didn't have them near play centers. They didn't have them where kids and parents were during the day. Like imagine that. And in Spot
Oh,
they have 30 seconds. They have 30 seconds to get somewhere. So imagine playing with your kids in a play center and all of a sudden all the alarms go off and you can't run anywhere because Spot
mm.
is super elevated and it's very high. It's like mountainous. So there's nowhere to hide. So you basically have to get down on the ground, lie on your stomach and put your hands over your head. Can you imagine doing that with like three or four children in 30 seconds?
Yep.
Then just being at the mercy of God, like, please don't hit me.
Yes.
So this friend, now a good friend, went and she raised a whole bunch of money and she started installing bomb shelters all over Spot and the northern area. And she now we're up to I think 55
Wow.
shelters. Amazing accomplishment. And so she contacted me and we met and she says, I'd love you to paint all of them. And I was like,
Oh,
oh boy.
all
So I was like,
55.
right. So I was like, how did this happen? I mean, so I had to kind of think quick and use all the tools that I had. And so I've been traveling all over Israel, like, I've been up north and partnering with this nonprofit organization. And yeah, I ended up painting three of them in one day in a school, in an Orthodox Jewish school. One of the
Wow.
shelters was dedicated to, I think, a baby that had died in a terror attack, I think, a previous
Mhm.
year. Um, and they dedicated a plaque to the shelter. So actually, what we did is I painted three shelters, and I put some very simple paraphernalia on them. And a synagogue came from New York, the chief rabbi of the school, like the schoolmaster, and the mayor of Sfat came, and they all dedicated the plaque and the three shelters to the school. Like, imagine being in a school that doesn't even have a shelter. I mean,
Oh,
it's
I
ridiculous
know.
to even a thing. And the roofs are like so, thin. So even if shrapnel fell through, it'd be
Yeah.
so
Be devastating.
you don't want to think about it. And actually, they showed me where shrapnel had and missiles had fallen right near the school and caused fires. Like it was just we don't know what it's like living over here with all that. But yeah, all of this maybe 30 to 50 people came, and I actually invited them to collaborate with the artwork that I did, and they kind of painted on top of things that I'd painted, and so that's still up there. It was a beautiful project to be able to participate with that. And then just last week, I finished one up near the skate park in Spot, which is a very elevated area, and you can see all the Sea of Galilee. It's beautiful.
Mm.
And I did something a little bit more out there, and I created a nightscape with like when you look up into the constellations of like the Milky Way and you can see
Yeah.
dust clouds and stars, and so I did all of that. And then one of the things I did was that I think I'm going to keep a theme of putting the menorah like the first thing they see when they go inside.
Mm.
So I created a menorah out of a star constellation, and
Oh,
I put that
wow.
in the door. I can show you the video. It's really cool. So I really
Yep.
enjoyed that, and I thought I might continue those themes because when you're using spray paint, you can make, dust clouds and things look really cool.
Yep.
So yeah, all up there, the five that I've completed so far over this whole period. Um, and me and my contact in Spot are going to look to extend this because I mean, it's not only a beautiful project and an honor. It's like an honor for an artist to do something like this, but it's actually really lifting the hearts of the people
Yeah.
and giving courage to them in a way that I never would have expected. And I've had so many people from the local or even the Australian Jewish community reach out to me.
Hmm.
And they want to collaborate with me or they want to meet me and have me speak at certain venues and things. And I didn't realize it was going to go this way, but I feel that, you don't realize that after 20 years, almost 20 years of a relationship with a people group, and also experiencing what life is on the ground, you don't realize that it carries weight, it
Yeah.
carries integrity. And now is the time to be the light. Yeshua said, "You're the light of the world, you're the salt of the earth." And there's so many aspects of God's kingdom that have to do with righteousness, truth, peace, justice, mercy. So I'm just, so honored to be able to showcase that and
Mm.
to genuinely love the people of this country, whether they're Jew or Arab, and just bring some clarity because of all of this confusion and toxicity that's happening in the nations. If we can somehow just continuously be consistent with being the light of the world, demonstrating God's kingdom with these solid truths, maybe we can save some lives, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And
Yeah.
I'm just wondering how was the reaction of the children going into these shelters that you've just done with the children's themes, with the like the space and all of that sort of thing. What's their reaction been?
Well, I mean, I haven't been, when I was there was no one there because it was a school
Oh,
day.
okay.
So all
Yeah.
the kids
Yeah.
were away. But I mean, I would love to see what it's like to have all the
Yeah.
kids at the skate park and seeing it because they're probably quite shocked. Like one day, it took me 2 days to knock it out. I was so proud of myself. Didn't take
That's
2 weeks.
amazing.
Yeah, it was a miracle. I'm so surprised I did it. I was so pressed for time and everything, and I managed to do it. But I'd love to see the before and after of people's reactions. Because in the skate park, there wasn't many people around.
Yep.
Whereas in Tiberias, I was on a busy, busy road. And so
Yes, you're on the.
it was constant interaction. Um, Actually, there was another shelter that I forgot to mention. Oh, so that would be six shelters, which was in a small suburb called Nof Kinneret, which is just kind of on the outskirts of Sfat, looking over the Sea of Galilee. It's a relatively newer suburb. And I ended up painting a shelter that was right next to a kids' play center. So, like, little climby monkey bars and slides and
Yeah.
everything. It's a
Yep.
big, huge play center. And literally, there's the fence and this big, huge gray bomb shelter. And again, like being able to look at that in the same context, it kind of gives you chills because you're like,
Yes.
this shouldn't be. That's what the first thing you think is, this
Yeah.
shouldn't be the people who have to live like this. And so I came up with the theme to paint again, something that was happy and kind of childlike, and I covered the whole thing with hot air balloons. The whole thing with hot air balloons, and then down the
Oh,
bottom I had like a picture of the Kinneret and the Sea of Galilee and the Golan Heights, just minimal with a bit of flowers and birds and stuff. But the theme was all these different multicolored hot air balloons, and then as you walked in, there was a huge hot air balloon, but it had the menorah on it.
oh wow.
So it was a lot of, yeah, it was very fun. And I just thought to myself, when I stepped back and looked at it, I thought, wow, like this is actually going to help the kids
Yes.
because it's no longer this horrible thing that's supposed to be quite scary. It's actually quite
Mm.
attractive and we all want to play in it. So again, I saw that how the gift of artistic expression and love, like
Mm.
heavenly love, actually can change the psychology.
Yeah,
and be a ministry in itself. So I was really
exactly.
happy with.
Because then that's really extending the playground into the bomb shelter as one space rather than another scary space. Um, I'm just
Right.
thinking too, Justin, for people in Australia that haven't travelled to the land, they are really in a fight for their survival right now. How are you finding their psyche, how are they doing? How are they doing?
Oh, Ruth, that's such a big question, and it's
Yeah.
worth asking because no one's asking it. And I'll tell you what I've observed. So, throughout history, when you look at the consistency of the Jewish people, um, you can see the hand of God's and his covenant promises being fulfilled. Like you
Yep.
can see his hand behind him bringing them back to the land, behind him drawing them from the north, south, east, and the west, behind them becoming a nation,
Mm.
behind them coming up from the ashes, behind them, conquering the agriculture of a desert and turning it into a garden,
Yes.
behind their intelligence and technology. Like it's all God, right? Whether
Yes.
people acknowledge that or not. So there's this aspect of the people of Israel, the nation of Israel, that's always going to have this stitched in element, if you could see it spiritually, of the grace of God and the promises of God. I see that. I
Mm.
honor that. And so you have that aspect here. And sometimes it comes forth in, like, say, Jewish pride, like we're never going to be defeated. And, but they don't realize that it's actually that's coming from God, not the pride element, but the faith to always bounce back and to
Yes.
always, in the face of death, will keep going. Like there's a huge cultural nuance here of, uh, you know, let's say you're in Tel Aviv and all the rocket sirens go off, and then you have to run into a bomb shelter and you're having dinner. So you take your wine down and your phone down and you sit there for 10 minutes and then all the alarms go off and everyone just goes immediately back to dinner. They don't go into trauma. They don't. So there's the mentality of Israeli people, Arabs, Jews, Russian people, not just the Jews, the Israeli people, of we will not allow terrorism to change our life. We will
Yeah.
not bow the knee to them trying to take away who we are. We're always going to live. And that's something I think is a lot very courageous.
Mm.
We actually need a lot of that in the body of the Messiah. Like I think that's faith. So
Yeah.
that's one element. How are they doing? I think that's stitched into the people here, and they kind of practice it really well collectively. But let me say this as well. As much as that is a way of life over here to respond that way, just like as a knee-jerk reaction because they've been doing it for such a long time, the fact that you've got what, seven or even eight nations now that are like all turning on Israel, and
Mm.
then you have these horrendous big time news media outlets that were supposed to be trusted for decades, but have also become toxic,
Yep.
and everyone relied on them. And all of a sudden, they've got this really, it's a delusional, deceiving, like who's at the hem of all of that? We know, you and I know. But
Yes. Yeah.
because you've got this pressure now, and because you've got um, this horrible atrocity of what happened on October 7 being number one, that it happened, that's enough trauma. Number
Yes.
two, that we've lost, I think, over 800 soldiers. That's
Correct. Yep.
800 dads, fathers, brothers.
Yes.
I can't process that yet. It makes me really
No.
sick. I'll be honest. Um, you've got a lot of people who have got PTSD. I
Mm.
won't even mention the other, like, so the crushing of that on this country is taking its toll in the
Yep.
essence of people don't know who they can trust.
Yeah.
You see people have a bit of a short fuse.
Yep.
Um, the anxiety, like when you're driving on the roads here, I mean, the roads are bad enough, but like
At the best of times.
sometimes Middle Eastern culture, not just Israel, but Middle Eastern cultures, its own experience on the road. But like with everything that's going on, you can feel the anxiety.
Yeah. Yep.
And so it's like a crescendo of a whole bunch of different extremes that are happening here. Um, so I'm very sensitive to those type of atmospheres and people, and I can see like you've got both this incredible God's promised us this nation where we're going to believe it, we're going to fight, we're going to protect our people, and they're actually fighting the battle for the whole nation, like the
Oh,
whole planet.
exactly. Yeah.
You don't understand that they're like the forerunners that are actually demonstrating what we should be doing with evil, what we should be doing with terrorism. Yes, you pray for your enemies, but if people don't want to change, then they have to be removed. So we've got these two things going on, and I think that um, however we're gifted as individuals, we need
Mm.
to take a position of being selfless. And if you have grace to serve, serve. If you have grace to give, give. If you have
Yeah.
grace to pray, pray. If you have grace to just go up to people who are suffering, and then this should be the norm in
Yeah.
any part of life, but especially right now for the people of this country who God chose to be in first position. They're not better. Jews aren't better. They just happen to be first in line. And they happen to be the ones he chose to bring the Messiah and chose to bring the Torah and chose to bring the kingdom. So I will always honor that position for Jewish
Yes.
people. And part of my family is Jewish, so it's like I'll always honor that. And Yeshua and the Messiah, he's Jewish. I'll always honor that. But right now, they need support in the
Yes.
essence of love,
Mm.
100% prayer to the people who know how to pray.
Yes.
And they also need advocacy.
Yep.
And I think that
Mm.
there's no point getting into arguments if you have no grounds of facts, if you're uneducated, or if you're just triggered by something that you want to, go on. There's no
No
point doing any of
tension.
that stuff.
Yep. That's right.
So I think that, yeah, like how are they doing? They're suffering a lot,
Yeah.
and they like all of us on the planet are suffering, but this country particularly,
Is
and actually all of the Middle East. So that's why I say, like, whatever your grace is, whatever your heart is leaning towards, even people talking about the Palestinian people, the people in Gaza who identify as Palestinian, you're like, what about the Palestinians? Well, you know what? They're also suffering, but there's a
yes.
whole reason that they're suffering, and it's not
Yep.
Israel.
Yes.
So
That's
having
another
the
story.
we could do a whole other podcast on that, and I'd love
Yep.
to do it with the level of exposure that maybe you and I have both had.
Yes.
But if people want to be of assistance, first of all, stay out of fights that you have no business being involved in.
That's
If you
good.
do want to be worse for something, get super educated and do it through people who live here.
Yes.
Like, don't do
Exactly.
it through TikTok. Don't do it through Instagram. Don't do it through Google.
Yes.
Talk mouth to mouth, face to face with people who've lived more than 10, 20 years here
Yes.
on both
Amen. Amen.
sides.
That's awesome wisdom. Now, Justin, your website so that people can go there and support you in this wonderful work is what's
Just
your
my full
website?
name, justinandrewhook.com.
Hook.
I'm on Instagram. Don't bother with Facebook. I don't use that platform as much anymore. But I mean, yeah, I'm on Instagram and obviously my personal website. And if people want to contribute to me, you can click on there's a page called Projects, and if you scroll down, you'll see a YouTube video of the first bomb shelter which we were talking about. You'll see the
Yep.
little video of that, and then people can give with donations or PayPal. Just whatever they feel to do, I don't mind.
It's
And
fantastic.
then of course sharing content like this. And then if there's something you want me to be involved in, reach out to me. I mean, my
Mm.
information's on the website, and I can't commit to everything, obviously, but I'm loving connecting with so many different people and just seeing where this is going. So
It's awesome. Well, thank you for joining us today, Justin. And it's just been wonderful to chat with you, especially while you're still in the land. And just stay tuned for what else Justin will be doing in the future. Amen.